Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett.
Host of the Tony Kinnett Cast.
Merry Christmas.
You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYBC.
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening. Welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast. We unfortunately have to dig right into quite a bit of news. The Brown University press conference has now been delayed for hours as a vehicle in the general vicinity of where the press conference is being held in Providence, Rhode Island, is currently being searched by police. Right now, there is a be on the lookout, a BOLO order issued for a particular silver sedan in Massachusetts. So this is a gray Nissan Sentra from Salem, New Hampshire, all the way down to Massachusetts and Connecticut. So if you're in the general New England area, you see a gray Nissan Sentra, just see something, say something kind of a situation, I believe. So we're going to get into the reason why this is especially important regarding the Nissan of all things, believe it or not. Let's dig right into some of these breaking updates. They do believe at this point that they have a name and a suspect in mind. They have not released it to the public. Again, I'm not entirely sure why they would not be releasing that to the public at this time. The more eyes in a situation like this that you can have on the lookout for an individual, the better it is. Also, I find it rather interesting that they were able to leak the name of the first person that they had in custody, the member of the Army Infantry, that, again, we raked through all of his history and just to let him go, say he didn't have any real connection with it. They thought this person's name they so far have under lock and key. Again, that may change while we are in the middle of the show. There are quite a few theories on the age and the nationality of the suspect in this case. We're not going to get into speculation on that as of yet, but there are a couple more scandalous updates coming out of Brown University itself. And, well, first and foremost, as we found out today, the shooter apparently walked right by a police car in the Providence, Rhode Island Police Department. And so the question that a lot of reporters asked immediately was, well, then you must have dash cam footage, right? Every police department in the country, which has a vehicle that has been worked on since 1992, has a dash cam. I mean, there was an entire series devoted to that dash cam footage, being cops. Here was the response.
Does that mean that the dash cam in that cruiser was on and activated, and have police been able to recover anything useful from that video?
So that was a brown police cruiser, and I'm not sure if they have body cameras in their cruisers. I don't think they do.
Dash cam, no.
Okay.
Oh, that was a brown cruiser. Only the red class cruisers and the level 6 cruisers have dash cam capability. Again, there's tons of money flowing into Providence, Rhode Island. Its police department, of course, Brown University, they can't afford dash cams. They're ridiculously cheap. This is the biggest scandal of the day, though. According to recorded radio contact messages that we have obtained of the communication between dispatch in Providence, Rhode Island and the Providence, Rhode Island Police Department, the shooter was able to get away because there were Providence, Rhode Island police officials, police officers that showed up and spent so much time preparing and waiting next to their cars that it allowed the shooter to escape. So here's some of that audio, not footage, but some of that audio material recorded from the radio and police scanner in the area.
Source 1, if you have anyone available, Providence is requesting an address check for 2 suspicious parties, 59 Manning Street.
184, I'm in row.
If anyone could back, 181.
Couple. Next one has it.
Next one on the click and clear 181. It's 59 Manning Street. 2 parties hiding in a driveway.
All right, so if it's true, again, that the Providence, Rhode Island Police Department had officers that were stationed out next to police vehicles, And the shooter just walked right out past them because, again, they were so busy. It's now believed that the Providence, Rhode Island Police Department showed up while the shooting was still in progress and did not go in to see who was dead or alive. I'm going to make this clear. If you sign up to be law enforcement, if you sign up for immigration customs enforcement at the federal level, you sign up at your local police department, I don't care whether you're a deputy, I don't care whether you're a state trooper, if you sign up to protect and serve, then you had better well protect. Ever since Uvalde, we've seen footage of police officers that are cowering by their vehicles instead of going in and addressing the shooting. We've seen this in the Bondi Beach attack, of course, over in Sydney, Australia in the last week. This idea where you are brave enough to say, I'm going to join the police force, but then you're not going to actually put your life on the line. I'm for supporting the cops who do the putting their life on the line. So many of our law enforcement and our military go through the process day after day after day of putting themselves in harm's way for you and for me. But if you put on the uniform and there is another officer next to you relying on you to do what they would, and you're not willing to do the same kind of sacrifice, get off the force, go do something else. Go be a mall cop. Because whatever this is that has become such an epidemic in police departments is insane. And here's, by the way, an investigation from Fox News. The one door, supposedly, in this engineering building at Brown University that didn't have any cameras on it, the one door is the one that the shooter escaped from. Here's that report from Fox News.
Gunman, primary person of interest, the suspect, came out of that entrance or exit and started walking this way and passing this dumpster. If you just look around this parking lot to show everybody, there are no cameras that we can see out here, right outside of the Barris and Hawley building. You can see there are no cameras that we see visible to the eye. So that is something that has been a big sticking point in this investigation.
Why wouldn't you put cameras on the perimeter of campus so you can see who's coming on the campus and who's coming off?
Jesse Waters is absolutely correct. I do want to update. We're not going to call the breaking alert just yet to my friends at the Daily Signal. If there's, some of our team from DC filling in, we might want to actually let the team's chat know that it might be ready to prepare a breaking article in this particular instance. There is a car that is currently surrounded. An arrest has been made, or at least that's some of the reports that we're getting in. They do have a vehicle surrounded. We're just going to hold our breath and be very patient here until the official announcement comes. But they do apparently have an individual who is surrounded. Now, there are a lot of questions about Brown University's policies itself regarding cameras and regarding why Brown University may have pulled cameras from buildings. As one reporter accused earlier today in a press conference, the current suggestion is that Brown University is essentially trying to hide some of its university policies by not having things recorded. Here was that clip.
The camera in that building, they Brown put off because the sanctuary city law that we have, you don't want to record illegal immigrants, and you don't want to provide the footage to the FBI or immigration authority. One camera in that building, it come out from your detectives, they are friends of mine, they're angry at this investigation that these people in Brown University put the camera off, they can identify that person. You imagine how the family want to go through? Tell the truth to the media here.
So there are a lot of individuals, both in the general community of Providence, Rhode Island, as well as reporters who are in the area saying, okay, you do realize at this point that policies that you may or may not have had at the university, like, letter from 34 different human rights groups in August that requested that Brown University disable their entire CCTV system for equity reasons. Because, if you have an illegal immigrant or a migrant who's on campus, or maybe someone who participated in violent protests and riots, as an individual we have previously mentioned on the show had, well, then wait a minute. Then it looks like Brown University is violating the settlement that it made with the Trump administration regarding no longer violating the Civil Rights Act in exchange for money and grants. And in a horrible twist of irony, now Brown University's failure in responding to this shooting may be caused in their silly attempt to protect human rights in the most insanely stupid way possible. and their method of protecting human rights, again, what they're calling human rights here, they're protecting illegal immigrants from being deported, may actually, in this particular instance, have led to a prolonged period of danger that might have not just, again, cost the individuals their lives at the Brown University Engineering Building, but also a professor at MIT. We're going to get to that in a minute. We might have to bring you back from the commercial early for the radio crew. We're going to continue on the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. So right now, there are, according to, again, more sources, people are kind of keeping an eye on flight radar. There are several choppers. For example, November 55 Sierra Lima, and that chopper designation, circling the area, focusing on a hybrid residential and commercial area away from the mall. Producer Nick, can you give me some more details on this mall and the town that it's in and the kind of the stats and the population on it? I want to have it up on my screen here. In the meantime, we need to talk a little bit more about things that the Brown University and Rhode Island Providence Police Department teams missed. And not only missed in a horrific fashion. So there was a series of tips that came out in the last 24, 48 hours. You may remember where people said, hey, I've noticed something suspicious. I see something, therefore I say something. I noticed this university deleting a lot of web pages about this one student's achievements. I noticed something about this particular vehicle with these kinds of plates from this state. That was weird to me. I noticed this. And they issued tips. And if you recall, the very response from people like Sheldon Whitehouse was that people in Rhode Island and across the country needed to shut up and let law enforcement handle it because you don't know anything about law enforcement and investigation. Not like, that genius. Again, if your entire summary knowledge of law enforcement is, running for office and, at times hearing the Law and Order theme, then I really don't want to hear it. I'm sorry, I really don't want to hear it because now it appears that we do have tips leading to the vehicle in this particular instance. This was, sent over our way by 0 Hour, who's done a lot of kind of open source intelligence tracking on this particular investigation. One post based on the UI appears to be Reddit. This is from 2 days ago and some change, hour-wise. Said, quote, I'm being dead serious. The police need to look into a gray Nissan with Florida plates, possibly a rental. That was the car he was driving. It was parked in front of a little shack behind the Rhode Island Historical Society on the Cook Street side. I know because he used his key fob to open the car, approached it, and then something prompted him to back away. When he backed away, he relocked the car. I found that so odd. When he circled the block and approached the car, that's when I saw the Florida plates. He was parked in the section between the gate of the Rhode Island Historical Society and the corner of Cook and George Street. We have no information right now that suggests that the Rhode Island and Providence police teams took this into effect at all, that they took any kind of consideration on these tips. Again, there were a lot of tips that were thrown out because the university officials got really flustered that people were drawing conclusions about whether this was a particular targeted attack. Now, right now in Salem, New Hampshire is where, as of right now, just after 7:19 p.m., the Federal Bureau of Investigation agents are now being seen surrounding a storage facility. And this is in Salem, New Hampshire. We're going to keep you up to date on this as quickly as we can and as sure as we can verify the sources that are coming in. WPRI today also announced a more sure resolution, consideration that the shooting of a professor at MIT, a nuclear physicist, a nuclear engineer, and his shooting are directly connected to the shooting at Brown University. Before we get to that, I do want to point out also one last piece of information on just Brown University's lack of communication. They did find unused cartridges. This hasn't been specified where, if they found them outside or they found them inside. This is one of the reasons why in a couple of shows ago we made the point that it was bad to have people stomping around in the snow outside. You might drive things to the ground. If you have an unused cartridge that has been found, there is a DNA method that you can actually pick things up off of unspent cartridges if he's touched it. We got to bring the radio crew back from commercial and get into more breaking news. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIPC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated, first on 93 WIBC. A huge thank you to my producers, Daniel and Nick, who are the reason that at least producer Nick is so quiet. I've asked them to kind of keep an eye on several different updates. We're trying to make sure that we have everything so far verified, at least to some degree, before we share it here on the air. Because when you get into this quickly moving of a game, things can get a little speculatory rather quickly.
Yes, all I can confirm based on flight radar that I'm watching is that there are 3 choppers still in the area circling the storage facility.
And we'll keep you up to date. There's also some photos being shared of an alleged possible suspect. I'm not going to share that just yet until we have some more confirmation. That said, we need to keep moving because there's far more news even than this. I do want to point out WPRI in Rhode Island, I believe that's their ABC affiliate. Well, we'll find out in a second when I play the clip. Pointed out that the Brown and MIT shooting are indeed connected. Here you go.
The 2 attacks may be linked, and this is from multiple law enforcement sources to both us, our 5 Investigates team, and ABC News. And that information about this connection was developed in the last 24 hours as detectives working on both cases. So Providence Police taking the lead in Rhode Island, and Brookline Police with Mass State Police taking the lead here in Massachusetts. They compared notes, and the sources said investigators believe they are close to identifying a suspect, which would be a huge break.
Yeah,
And frankly, a sigh of relief for the whole region.
Now, this newscasting aside, we are going to continue tracking. As for the situation at large in the region, there are several bolos and bulletins that are still out to federal and local agencies. We do not have confirmation that they have caught the guy yet. They are surrounding a storage facility. So at this point in time, we're going to, again, continue on with some of the rest of our coverage and then bounce back to this when we get further information. In the greater New England area, there is another major scandal that broke today. It appears that a community of migrant Haitians have also been involved in a major fraud scandal, this time defrauding the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP. Here was a report on this, an announcement, I should say, from the U.S. Prosecutor's Office earlier today.
Bonner and Saul Elisme for large-scale SNAP benefit trafficking, a scheme that turned a program designed to feed families into a multi-million-dollar criminal enterprise. SNAP benefits are also known as food stamps. The defendants are charged with 1 count of food stamp fraud. As alleged in the charging documents, these men abused one of the government's most critical safety net programs for their own financial gain. This is taxpayer money meant to keep people from going hungry. These defendants decided to take it for themselves. These defendants exchanged SNAP benefits for cash, which they pocketed. Bonner, a naturalized U.S. citizen from Haiti, owned the Jesuela Variety Store. Elisme, a lawful permanent resident also from Haiti, owned the Saul Mache Mixe store.
So what you have here is a case that, by the way, so many people in this country routinely observe. Not just individuals who are suspected of being migrants or illegal immigrants, but individuals who will go and buy things on SNAP or EBT and then will go dump water bottles out in the parking lot and then exchange certain cases for drugs. or will exchange certain things for alcohol or other tangibles. They'll do secondhand selling. There were, I believe, 34 stings in the last couple of months, since September, I should say. 34 stings since September on Facebook Marketplace alone at the federal level for individuals who are in the secondary resale of things used to purchase SNAP, because that's a kind of fraud. And now we have a group of Haitian individuals, legal residents, those who have migrated from Haiti, who have participated in $7 to $10 million in fraud. But lest you think that we're overshadowing the situation in Minnesota, that got a whole lot worse. I made the case on the show a couple of weeks ago when the ceiling was expanded from $1 billion in Somali fraud to $8 billion in Somali fraud. I had said that based on some individuals that I talked to inside the administration, that it was more likely $8 to $10 billion. I'm sorry to report that I was wrong. I was wrong. It is not $8 to $10 billion of suspected fraud. Now we believe that there may have been up to $18 billion, $18 billion of fraud in what is turning out to be one of the largest statewide fraud scandals in the history of this country. Check it out. This is the assistant U.S. attorney investigating the Somali fraud case in Minnesota.
I spoke in the fall about the iceberg I saw ahead. Something's fraud that's much larger than what's been visible to the public. When I said that, it wasn't hyperbole or rhetoric, it was a warning. And today I want to talk and I want to show here a sense of what that iceberg looks like, because I think people deserve to know what that is and how big this problem is, because we can't solve the problem until we grapple with the size of it. So the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services pulled the claims data for these 14 programs dating back to 2018. And those 14 programs in Minnesota have cost $18 billion since 2018, and more than $3.5 billion in 2024 alone.
That is insane. He is measuring billions of dollars in fraud casually. I know that today we have heard millions. Million no longer holds the same kind of impressive value to individuals as it did when, a lot of us were kids and someone was a millionaire. They had over $1 million. And you were like, whoa, $1 million. And now you'll have a press conference with billions and billions of dollars, billions flying out of his pants pockets. You hear the number all the time. To casually state, individuals in the Somali community in Minnesota were committing $3.4 billion this year, $2.5 billion that year, $8 billion this year. That is wild beyond belief.
So that's a sense of the magnitude of the problem. These are the 14 Medicaid programs, which is just a part of Medicaid, these waivered services that have been flagged as having issues with program integrity and fraud.
Now, here's the rough part. I will remind you that Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, has ordered his administration to refuse cooperation with federal authorities in providing Medicare, Medicaid, SNAP, housing, any other kind of subsidization, funding data to the government. Any of that. Minnesota is not to provide, because again, as we pointed out on the show before, Minnesota's had a huge spike in SNAP sign up, which we pointed out before the billions of fraud was reported during the COVID era in ways that other states didn't even come close to. And Tim Walz is trying to run a victory lap as though he's the one that has succeeded in exposing and sending these people to prison. No. Again, it is on record that Tim Walz went after not only whistleblowers in the Minnesota government, but also went after essentially the auditor for the state legislature in Minnesota, the person in charge of keeping track of the budget and whether or not things are above board. Radio crew, we have to send you to commercial again. We might bring you back early if we have more breaking news on the situation in New Hampshire and, of course, Brown University in Rhode Island. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. All right, so Attorney General Keith Ellison, you would think the Attorney General, the head law enforcement official in a state that is dealing with, again, now up to perhaps $18 billion in fraud. As a reminder, the entire GDP of Somalia is just under $13 billion annually. And that's if you're being generous, because Somalia doesn't actually keep accurate records. So in the last couple of years, this one fraud ring is 3/2 greater than the entire gross domestic product of the country of Somalia and all international agencies that reside within. It's insane. That is truly, truly insane. But what is Keith Ellison mad at? Well, Keith Ellison, he's furious. He's, pounding the lectern in Minnesota because Kia and Hyundai have a kind of security feature on the car that makes it really difficult to steal cars. And that upsets Keith Ellison. Because nothing upsets a Democrat law enforcement official more than being forced to actually arrest people committing crimes. Here's Keith Ellison losing it over Kia and Hyundai.
Instead, Kia and Hyundai put their profits ahead of vehicle safety and ahead of people. Within months of the Kia Boys Challenge, we had a crisis on our hands. A public safety epidemic of vehicle thefts, financial harm to consumers, injury, and tragically, even deaths. Today, I'm pleased to announce that we have reached a settlement with automobile manufacturers Kia and Hyundai for their role in this costly, deadly crisis.
Incredible. Oh, thank goodness. Oh, Nissan was forcing people to pay for their cars. Those jerks. How could you do that? Terrible. I mean, again, that's the squeaky wheel that needs the grease right now. Producer Nick, just as a quick question, if you were going to go after a series of dangerous crimes in Minnesota, does Nissan's payment plans or Kia's car alarms top the top 20 of charts of issues in Minnesota?
Based on the statistics that I just pulled up using advanced AI systems, no, they're not.
Is that your way of trying to get Perplexity to sponsor the show, advanced AI systems?
If Perplexity wants to sponsor the show, they can do that.
I like that. Yeah, very, very good stuff. All right, moving on to, again, some of the other news from the day. Keith Ellison, Attorney General, is not the only guy who's on the Democrat side of the aisle who has decided to make the dumbest of hills to die on their entire brand heading into 2026. We are now in the 2026 season. We're here. I know we're not yet into 2026, but it is midterm time, boys and girls. It is. And what the two parties are bringing forward, what the Trump administration and then what the conglomerate body of Democrats are bringing forward, is going to become a food fight extraordinaire over the next couple of months. And what people are bringing to the table, no pun intended, is really just rotten garbage so far. So on the Democrat side of the aisle, there is a lot of moaning, a lot of weeping, gnashing of teeth over, everything all the way from the trans procedure on minors ban that just passed the House over to healthcare. But I do want to point out real quick here that they're also very, very angry because Trump is not going after Fox News. That's just one of many in this particular story that's just weird, for no reason. Here's Jackie Rosen of Nevada losing it.
Will you commit to opening an investigation into Fox News for its deceptive editing?
No.
Earlier this year, you reinstated a closed FCC inquiry into CBS News for alleged edits of an interview with Kamala Harris that Donald Trump claimed was done to help.
Yeah, so CBS is on Spectrum Air. They follow different rules than cable. CNN, Fox News don't follow the same rules. Don't be dumb. Be back in a second. We got to bring the radio crew back and more breaking news to follow. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYPC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast. We are keeping an eye on the situation in New Hampshire, Salem, New Hampshire, to be precise, in which there are helicopters and federal agents with rifles drawn that are now surrounding a storage area, combing through a kind of pseudo-residential and commercial district, trying to find the suspect at the moment. One of the three helicopters, I believe, is currently headed back, probably to refuel. There's a police chopper and a news chopper still in the area. Is that correct, Producer Nick?
One of the choppers, N55SL, landed at Lawrence Municipal Airport. I believe that is one of the news choppers. The other news chopper is still in the air alongside what appears to be a privately owned, being used by possibly federal law enforcement.
Wow. You ask your producer for a statement. That's so succinct. That's stellar stuff. Well, here's some of the footage that we have. Nick Sordor sent this over our way. You can see federal agents surrounding several of the vehicles near this storage facility. This is about 15 minutes ago in Salem, New Hampshire. As you can see, one of the choppers kind of zooming out over the area here. Kind of a warehouse-style storage unit. You flip ahead a little bit more, you can actually see some of the federal agents down there have rifles drawn, kind of battle ready, drawn across the chest.
It has been confirmed that some of the federal agents are U.S. Marshals.
Some of the agents are U.S. Marshals. Well, given that I reported, again, just 2 days ago that the U.S. Marshals offices had been sending internal and external bulletins, I'm happy to say that that unnamed source came through. That's something to put up there. So the one comment from the users that I do want to address for validity's sake here, it's from Roselle. She says, Tony, did you see that they, being the law enforcement, used their feet to look for something in the snow? I assume you're referencing the unspent cartridges. So yes, I did. The reason that I had an issue with federal law enforcement local law enforcement that was looking through the area as they were at the time, they were not just kind of kicking the snow out of the way and combing through the area. Here, I think we actually have one of these videos to pull up here. As you can see, those who are watching, they're not just kicking, they are stamping around in the snow. So there is one officer
to find metallic objects.
Right. One of the officers is pushing through the area.
Detectors.
Others are kind of stomping through the scene. So you had some that were doing the right stuff, some that were stomping boy style. That's not what you want to do to find particular things. So in that instance, moving on to some other big news, I'm sorry that this is, again, a show that is bouncing around a little bit. We're just trying to make sure that we keep updates as quickly as possible. In the meantime, Marjorie Taylor Greene's bill protecting children from transgender procedures, surgeries, hormonal treatments, and therapies, etc., has passed the House. Now, there were 4 very moderate Republicans who voted against it. Lawler, I believe, was one. Fitzpatrick was another. I don't have that particular list in front of me, because more entertaining is Tim McBride, who calls himself Sarah, the dude in a skirt from Delaware, representative, yelling about the government not being involved in healthcare. So there is currently a Democrat of the House of Representatives who is complaining that Republicans want the government involved in healthcare. That is the wildest sentence I think I've ever uttered on the air. Here you go.
I get it's hard to understand what it feels like to be trans.
That's true. I have no idea what it feels like to dress in women's clothing and pretend that I don't have a penis. Because I don't lean into mental illness. I don't affirm mental illness.
Mostly mentally stable?
Yeah, mostly mentally stable. Days, first couple days of the week anyway.
I get that it is hard to understand what it feels like to be me.
Get in there and make it about you.
I get that it's hard to understand this care and understand the need for it.
Again, medically, there has been no research that has proven a need for this gender-affirming care. Again, this hormonal experimentation, not to mention the genital mutilation surgeries.
But one of the things that gets so lost in this conversation is that the transgender adults of today were kids once.
Yeah, ask some of those who have detransitioned about what it was like to be a child and be shoved through that program. Also, if you're going to talk about the adults who are transgender compared to those who are children, you're only going to be talking to, statistically, about half the number of adults, given the suicide rate in the mentally ill transgender community is extraordinarily high.
I was a kid once.
Thank you. I was born at a young age. Thank you, Tim.
I didn't have the courage to come out until I was 21.
You didn't have the mental
but it's
instability.
a fact I have known about myself for my entire life.
Okay.
I didn't have the courage to come out until I was 21, and that means 21 years of pain. 21 years of unwavering homesickness that only went away when I was able to get the care that I needed.
So I'm gonna level with everyone out here. So first of all, the irony of a man talking about experiencing pain periodically. I ached to be a woman. I mean, not like women do, but go ahead.
You were actually feeling the pressure of delusions that was only abated when people confirmed them and reaffirmed you.
Weird stuff. Anyway, here's where he gets into his big argument. The government doesn't need to be involved in healthcare.
And my biggest regret in life is that I never had a childhood without that pain. I marvel at the courage of transgender young people today who are sharing themselves with their families and this world despite
Poor choice of words.
The toxicity and the hate that too often emanates from the building behind me and from politicians within it. All any of us want is to live a life of purpose and happiness and wholeness. None of us know how long we have. None of us know how much time we have on this planet. It is already hard enough to raise a family. It is already hard enough to be a kid.
Okay, I mean, it's pretty much darn near impossible to raise a family if you don't have the parts to do that, one might say. He continues in saying that, well, the real problem here is that Republicans want government shoved into your health care. I'm totally fine with government being out of healthcare, but I'm sorry, you don't get to mutilate children. That's not a thing that you get to do. That's not a thing. If I have a child that only wants to eat brownies for dinner, then I do not have an obligation to only serve the child brownies for dinner. It's malnutrition. It's a bad decision. My child believes they're anorexic or bulimic, and therefore they should be able to starve themselves. You don't accede to that. No, that's not how it works. And you see this all over. Rebecca Balint of Vermont also doing some of this nonsense. We'll probably play that clip a little bit later. Well, no, we'll play it right now. She called it cruel, terrible. How could you keep these wonderful carcinogenic hormonal treatments away from these children that, we're sterilizing?
Even for Republicans, this is extreme. Are we really attempting to lock up parents and doctors? Your kid.
If you cut your kid's arm off, you should go to jail. If you cut your kid's penis off, you should go to jail. Sorry.
Yeah, these people will talk about how short and precious life is. Let's not make it any shorter by giving these kids irreparable damage to their bodies that'll shorten their lifespans greatly.
Just the insanity that is so consistent. The Democrats really think they're going to run this forward. They're going to make this the move. Now, again, we could talk all day about, kind of the caterwauling. We could talk about like kind of the Letitia James of all of this, like that New York is going to stand up and fight this. No.
Hello, everyone. It's Tish James. I want to speak directly to the transgender community, especially to our young people and their families who count on gender-affirming care. I know this latest proposal from this administration to cut access to gender-affirming care for many youth is frightening. Whether you live in Brooklyn, Binghamton, Buffalo, or anywhere else in New York, and even if you don't live in New York, I will not let this administration come for you, your doctors, or your life-saving health care.
Yeah, Tisha's going to stand in the breach. You have a right to inject hormones into your children that sterilize and, again, do not actually reduce suicidality whatsoever. No peer-reviewed, documented, reproducible, objective study suggests that. Don't look at me. That's the World Health Organization, which has now come out and accepted both United Kingdom, United States health studies officially funded, sourced, objectively repeated. Nothing on that does anything of any benefit to children whatsoever. We're going to send the radio crew over to commercial again. We are tracking the situation in Salem, New Hampshire, where they might be closing in on the Brown University shooter and possibly the MIT shooter as well. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast radio crew. We'll see you guys in a second. Producer Nick, you have something? Yeah, we do have a particular clip now. There's a guy by the name of Wright Aviation, like a Wright kind of dude who appears to be on the scene.
As in Wright brothers.
Thank you. Over in Salem, New Hampshire, we're going to catch this clip, see what he has to say. Apparently he's down on the scene there.
Okay, everybody, I am here on scene, just behind me. As you can see, there's a police presence here. It's 10 Hampshire Road. I'm going to see if I can get any closer without disturbing anybody.
So what you have, again, a lot of media starting to converge on this scene. I'm not even sure that they have spotted the suspect. There's a lot of rumor that they're looking around for him. They might have a bead on the individual.
The reason why I shared that update from him is he was on the scene and had reported that he did hear gunshots on his way towards the scene.
We will keep an eye on that for sure. Moving a little bit forward here, because again, we want to make sure that we try to get as much of the news covered as possible. The Democrats are trying so desperately to frame the entire next year on healthcare. We were about to have Representative Pfluger, who has proposed one of the alternatives for the Obamacare plan on the show today. And then the House did like 5 or 6 last-minute end-of-year votes, so we're getting that rescheduled. Senator Mullen and Bernie Sanders almost resorted to some cane fighting in the Senate today. Things are wild right now in the country. And I'm not saying that to sensationalize things, but we often make fun of the Canadian Parliament, the United Kingdom Parliament, for essentially being a junior high lunchroom. Congress is getting there, slowly but surely. Here's Senator Mullen and Bernie Sanders fighting over a very strange cancer care proposal that Sanders tore down.
Literally killing kids in front of us because of his political movement. And it is ridiculous.
Therefore, Mr. President, I ask that the request be modified, that my amendment at the desk be considered and agreed to, the bill as amended be considered read a third time and passed, and the motions to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table.
Is there objection to the modification?
I reserve the right to object.
I recognize the senator from Oklahoma.
Mr. President, everything that the senator from Vermont just wrote about was why I think he supported affordable health care, a.k.a. Obamacare. I thought it was supposed to fix all this stuff that he's wrote about, and we figured out it hasn't. It's wrecked the system. It's unaffordable for the American people. Yet it was the Democrats that sold the American people on it. Not us, not the Republicans, sold the American people on it. It's been disastrous. And so now he wants to hold kids that are dying of rare diseases and pediatric cancer. Want to hold them hostage to now try to push his agenda farther and not go through the committee of jurisdiction, but hold the kids hostage. The kids. Everything the senator from Vermont just talked about was political. I'm talking about lives. I'm talking about giving kids a chance to live an extra day.
All right, we're going to have to cut this off because, again, there's a lot of speculation, again, going on right now about a particular photo that is being shared of an individual. There's this account calling itself News Channel 3 Now. That's like 50 followers, but this tweet's getting a lot of attention. And it shows an individual in a high-vis vest that they're claiming is the shooter, Brown University shooter, caught on camera in Salem at the Extra Space Storage Facility. And yeah, that account's not real. It's from Pakistan. So we're going to keep looking. We got the radio crew to bring back one more time. Don't go anywhere. Tony Kinnett cast here on the Daily Signal.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. We are currently tracking the developing situation in Salem, New Hampshire, in which federal agents, including Federal Bureau of Investigation agents and U.S. Marshals, are around a storage facility. We have reports that the car of interest in this particular instance is a gray Nissan Sentra. We're still waiting. There are news choppers and law enforcement choppers that are on scene. We're keeping an eye on things. There are photos being shared around the interwebs right now from accounts that are outside the United States claiming to be from News Channel 3 Now. And there's no Channel 3 that I am aware of that is an affiliate Spectrum channel like that. Channel 3, as you may recall, guys, that's used for like the old AV game channel. Spectrum doesn't usually let TV stations broadcast on 3. That's just a little fun fact. Few in the 70s did. But no, those are accounts from other countries who are taking the opportunity to spread misinformation, to try to get things hectic and crazy, as they often do. So we'll bring you information as we continue. Again, there have been some reports of gunfire. There are now reports coming in that the Brown University gunman may have killed himself. We're not entirely sure. Again, the police have surrounded what appears to be a gray Nissan. From the photo, don't have anything closer here. We're going to keep an eye on this particular story. If we hear anything more, we're able to verify it. Again, individuals on the ground claiming to have heard the gunfire. There are various reports that the individual may have tried to kill himself. We're going to keep an eye on this particular story as it unfolds. And again, we're also keeping an eye on just how connected this particular shooting was to the assassination of a professor at MIT, a nuclear physicist, and reportedly also a very pro-Israel individual who was also murdered. Just kind of keeping an eye on things, trying to make sure that we bring you that which we can verify it. So there is also reporting of a possible mass shooting in Peru at a Christmas market. We talked about this on the show yesterday, folks. Now is the time of year in which those who participate in radical Islamic terror take it upon themselves to kill as many Jews and Christians as they can. We have seen this recently in the United States. Of course, you'll remember last year, New Year's Day, or I should say the beginning of this year, New Orleans, in which an individual drove through a crowd of individuals, of course, in Europe, quite a common sight of Islamic terrorists driving through Christmas markets trying to detonate their vehicles. Of course, mass shootings that have been consistent in the United States and abroad. We can see from various reports so far, from various open intelligence sources, that several individuals in Peru were shot, including children, at a Christmas market. Of course, we're coming from the horrifying Bondi Beach shooting in Australia, in which among those who were killed include a 10-year-old girl, Matilda. Her farewell funeral service today in Woollahra, Sydney. The Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, did not attend. The co-founder, however, for Australians for Palestine, in an earlier video saying, quote, "Melbourne is ours. Australia is ours. The world is ours." They just want free Palestine, folks. That's all. Totally nothing suspicious or concerning. Jihad is a good thing, maybe. Here's that fool.
Loud and proud, Melbourne is ours. Melbourne is ours. Australia is ours. The world is ours.
When they tell you who they are, believe them. Now, I'm also, again, there have been reports that Paris, several other communities in France, are now canceling any open Christmas celebrations, any open Hanukkah celebrations. Again, Hanukkah is not actually like a really huge holiday to the Jews. Ask those who are Jewish, not a huge thing, but again, so at the same time of the year. So Hanukkah events no longer no longer encouraged, banned outright, to be honest with you, in Paris. Again, that's local authority there. Several other cities in France, also in Spain, and then some in the United Kingdom, which are now advising people against celebrating Christmas, celebrating Advent openly in public, from celebrating Hanukkah in public because of the fear of Islamic terror. I'm not the guy who coined this, but this has become a common, let's say, thing to notice in the last couple of days. If you, as a country, have to ban certain holidays from being celebrated out in the open, and you as a country have to double and triple your airport security to keep away mass homicide and terror, that's no longer your country. Your country's been conquered. Europe, by importing millions of Muslim extremists from Africa, from the Middle East, from the Southeast, and just suggesting they could do it and it would be fine because after all, the Islamic individuals are just like, radical Muslims are just like you and me. Sure, these individuals from countries like Somalia, from, again, countries like Pakistan, Afghanistan, they come in, no vetting, and sure, they may like trash everything and there may be some gang rapes, and sure, there's a couple of, homicidal mass shootings. But as Tim Walz said, the real problem, it's the white man, whatever that means. Again, I would pose to you that perhaps right now the issue isn't as necessarily the firearms as it just might be the individuals who are openly shouting, "We will kill you," because Allah demands it. Just might be a bit of a bigger issue here. Now, again, right now, what we're looking at least around the world, we're currently tracking an investigation into what may be a serious mass shooting at a Christmas market in Peru. We're also tracking the rise in acid attacks in Europe, and those also possibly now coming to the United States, of course. There was an acid attack in, I believe, was it Central Park, New York, producer Nick, in the last week? Additional terror attacks.
There was another one in Georgia, I believe.
Another one in Georgia. My goodness. The uncivilized behavior. But in contrast, the President of the United States has announced that as part of the American 250th celebration that we'll be doing some Patriot Games. Sorry, we have to send the radio crew off for the evening. I just looked up at the radio clock. We're going to continue on the live stream. Y'all take care. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated, first on 93 WIBC. Sorry to those on the live stream. I have to play by the time clock syndication rules. To continue on the live stream, the President of the United States has announced, in addition to a $1,776 bonus, tax-free, to active servicemen and women, that the United States will be creating the Patriot Games, kind of like a localized U.S. Olympic-style game event, athletic event, in which every state and territory sends champions to fight for the glory of the Patriot Games. First of all, I didn't know we weren't doing this already. That's freaking awesome. That's incredible. I'm thrilled. I can't wait to see
What event would you participate in?
Some Hulk of a Hoosier or like an Iowa corn-fed boy go up against some dweeb from Connecticut and just wreck them. I'm looking forward to it. That's going to be good. Also, if you want to participate in these games, move to like American Samoa. And there's like 30 people living there. You probably could be the champion. The Democrats have decided this is, again, are the Democrats upset about the rise in Islamic terror? No. They're not. They're worried about the Islamophobia. That's what they're really, really concerned about. Again, going back to that classic Norm Macdonald joke, in which he says that if there was a major Islamic attack, the real concern, of course, would be, the Islamophobia that comes afterward. But in the case of the Democrat Party, they are announcing that the Trump administration launching these Patriot Games. Well, that's apparently just like the Hunger Games. The book series in which children compete and fight to the death. The Democrats actually posted this Hunger Games video on this Trump administration announcement.
So it was decreed that each year the various districts of Pan Am would offer up in tribute one young man and woman to fight to the death in a pageant of honor, courage, and sacrifice. The lone victor, bathed in riches, would serve as a reminder of our generosity and our forgiveness. This is how we remember our past. This is how we safeguard our future.
I just love that.
The comments are pointing out, has he never seen a Samoan? I have, actually. I roomed with one in college. Yes, I am very, very well aware to what you were referencing. And yeah, don't get me wrong, they could field one heck of a champion. But the actual American territory of like American Samoa is different than Samoa itself. Is why I was very clear and careful about the language there. I'm sorry that was a little confusing. Producer Nick?
I have to say, I'm glad that the Democrats themselves have found a new book to read outside of Handmaid's Tale. They were stuck on that one for a while. I know probably their reading comprehension could be a little better, but they're moving up. They're getting this one's at least a series, so they got a few books to work with now.
Again, I'm rather interested in this concept of those on the left having only ever read about 3 books. It's fascinating to me. It really is. So again, for a long time it was Harry Potter, and everything was Harry Potter. It was Voldemort, Harry Potter, that kind of nonsense.
What house are you in?
Yeah, that goofy gooberness. And then they read The Handmaid's Tale, and they found their weird fetish for like girl rape porn books. Yes, that is a very weird thing that has become a trend in American society. It's disgusting, it's perverse, and it's wrong. If you read those kinds of books, it is just as bad as looking at pornography and just as damaging to your mind. Just want to make that clear to be, equable here on the Tony Kinnett cast. But last but certainly not least, they've found the Hunger Games. Everything that Trump does, because they've already said he's Hitler, and I guess Hitler didn't have children competing against each other in gladiatorial combat. So instead of looking throughout history and naming a Roman emperor that might have encouraged gladiatorial combat, see, Democrats actually only know, as we've said before, like 3 historical figures. So therefore, they got to say their favorite fantasy fiction nonsense here, in which case is President Snow of Pan Am in the Hunger Games. Stunning, brave, exciting, thrilling. I love the direction of the party. This is some really good stuff. Oh, Shannon points out Lord of the Flies. Lord of the Flies, I'm going to level with you, overrated book. I don't care for it. I didn't think it was that interesting. I mean, I get it. Humans, some young men on an island desisting into tribal, animalistic chaos, yippee, good times, good fun. I don't know. I didn't care as much. I had a great English teacher, the tiny Christian school I went to in Muncie, but
I actually agree with you on this one, mostly because the book is very unrealistic because it actually happened. The Tongan castaways.
That is right. Yeah. By the way,
and they found them and they were all having quite a lot of fun.
Yes. That very, very, very true. Okay, we do have a little bit of an update here for you now as of 10 minutes ago. This is according to Brooke Taylor. She's the Fox News national correspondent. Hey, just like me for the Daily Signal. You never see national correspondents out in a boat. She says a direct high-level source on the ground in Salem, New Hampshire, says that federal law enforcement are about to enter the storage facility and that the reason you, meaning we, saw all of the officers in the parking lot just standing there is because they were watching surveillance footage to see whether the suspect was in the storage facility still. ATF, FBI, U.S. Marshals, and Providence Police are all on the scene. Thank you very much to Brooke Taylor over at Fox News for that particular update. Again, surrounding the building and surrounding the area so he can't leave and looking before you go in, that's intelligent. That's some good federal law enforcement. I will note that it is interesting that Providence Police are on the scene outside of their jurisdiction in New Hampshire. That's a little strange. I know that in many investigations, maybe they could be there as an advising capacity, but you're really not allowed to go into different states and participate in law enforcement. That would require an order of allowance from the governor. I don't even think attorney generals in the United States have the authority to allow other state, local law enforcement agencies. State troopers, yes. For example, like we saw at the RNC, the Republican National Convention, right after the attempted assassination on Trump, there were several states which sent state police officers to run security at the RNC. Local law enforcement, I don't believe, has the authority to do that. So that's very interesting. We'll keep an eye on that. Again, right now we're trying to keep an idea over what is currently going on in what might be a raid about to happen on a storage facility in Salem, New Hampshire. Several law enforcement agencies are currently outside the building preparing to go in, according to several sources. We're also monitoring in Peru. Reportedly, again, I would request. This is just a request from yours truly, trying to keep you updated on things that we know. I have not verified this particular source, but there are some videos and photos being shared of a Christmas event, a Christmas market, in the town of Saucel. That is in the district of Shaikama during a Christmas market, in which, again, reporting there to be a mass shooting taking place. So according to several sources now, I'm getting a couple of police authorities in the public ministry have arrived at the scene to carry out various corresponding procedures, crowd control investigation, God willing, also some first aid and some kind of rapid response in these particular instances. So right now, we are, again, still waiting for any kind of confirmation on whether or not federal agents are in contact with the particular shooter. There are reports of gunshots that have been heard. Officers are now storming the storage facility in Salem, New Hampshire. This is according to Spencer Hakimian. The manhunt for the Brown University shooter continues. So we're going to keep our eye on this. Again, I know it's probably not, exciting, riveting coverage, just trying to keep an eye on things as we move through some of the information. To one of the comments, now that we are, I suppose, in the bonus tonus portion of the show, asked if I was drinking Everclear from this mason jar. No. And it's not moonshine either. It is, like all good Hoosiers, my phenomenal well water from the Newcastle Tilway Aquifer. Yeah, that's right. I'm a nerd who knows the exact kind of well water that I enjoy. I was in DC yesterday, and so their water is awful and tastes like shame. So to be home and to have something fresh to drink, I'm not getting sauced on the air. I don't do that. Which reminds me, over to the president's address and how the president's administration has handled the Susie Wiles Vanity Fair article scandal. One of the things that I do appreciate about the president in this administration is his willingness to laugh things off that appear to be either embarrassing or insulting in front of the media. One of these things is that Susie Wiles had said that Trump had an alcoholic's personality. And those of you who know anything about President Trump knows that he doesn't drink. And he doesn't drink because of his brother. And he's aware of the addictive personality in his family. It's one of the reasons that I don't drink. My family has kind of a rough history on one side with alcohol. You just kind of stay away. It's like, why tempt fate on that particular side of things? And the president said, well, yeah, I do kind of have an alcoholic's personality. So I just, that's why I stay away from it. She's not wrong. And he just plays it off. That's very, very good Trump. Playing things off Trump. Now, last night, the president was prepared to give a major address to the country. There were all of these rumors that were being perpetuated by podcasters and by those in the new media sphere that we were going to have an official war announcement with Venezuela. We were going to invade the country. Guys, I'm going to level with you here for a quick second. We are leagues and steps and more steps away from a ground invasion. A ground invasion is done at a very particular time and in a very particular manner. We have not even reached the stage of hitting Venezuela with missiles on land. If the Trump administration is currently striking narco-terrorist vessels, again, striking like 4 or 5 in the last week, with missiles, AGMs, Hellfires, kinetic strikes of various sorts, and finding success doing so by keeping Marines and sailors safe from not having to interdict to those vessels themselves and possibly get shot, like 2 Marines who were killed in the Red Sea last year. They're not just going to boots on the ground D-Day Venezuela. It's not going to happen. Those who are trying to excite you into thinking that Trump has been neo-conned into a big expansionist war, no. The president got in front of the country and he said, we did a good job, and next year it's going to be better. And that was essentially the entire address. Some people are suggesting maybe the merits of it are really great, maybe they're not. Alas, I think that it was just fine. I do. We do have another new news update as well from this afternoon, I should say, maybe not particularly as new. According to the Insider Wire, all of the Brown University hospitalized shooting victims, those would be the 7 who were shot but not killed, are now stable. Praise the Lord. Thank God. Again, we are keeping an eye on the situation that is developing at the moment. We'll take probably a small diversion into discussing just a little bit of maybe a couple of Mailtime questions, answer a few, and then we'll continue on, tackle a few more things here. One of the question comes from Mike's. And Mike asks if I believe that we are going to see the shooter experience the death penalty in some of these recent attacks. The shooters experience the death penalty, or are they going to get off? To answer your question, I think that in Utah, Tyler Robinson is going to face the death penalty. The evidence, just continually, the more that we hear out of that situation, just surmounting, no way that his lawyer is going to be able to squeeze his way out of that one. If you look at the shooting up in Michigan, the Ascension Church, I don't think that we ended up getting the suspect alive. I think that they ended up committing suicide. As far as some of the other mass terror incidents, Luigi Mangione, there's actually a pretty good chance that he just gets off scot-free. And that likely has to do with the kind of the celebratorizing of his character before the jury was even selected. That's a major problem. And then, of course, with this individual, we don't know yet. I would certainly hope that whomever it is, they do receive the death penalty. And again, as all of you know, I would prefer that it be a public hanging. I think that the lethal injection is honestly too risky. And then, of course, when it comes to the electric chair or the firing squad, there's too much dignity in that. Part of a legal punishment should be humiliation. Otherwise, it's just pain. So that particular instance aside here. One question from Jules here. Do I think that Trump is going to get rid of Susie Wiles or Pam Bondi? No to either of them. I don't think that Trump is going to get rid of Pam Bondi. I don't think he's going to get rid of Susie Wiles either. I think the president of the United States is rather stubborn about keeping those in his administration right now. I believe that if there's anyone who might get a slight boot, it might be Kash Patel after the midterms. That would be my prediction if I had to guess. What do you think, producer Nick? Do you think is there an administration official? I know some have suggested maybe Kristi Noem. I don't think that would be the case. Anyone that you think that Trump might consider canning based on performance so far?
No, I really don't think so. I don't think that he'll can anyone. The success that we've been experiencing is enough to justify individuals to keep their jobs. Maybe there will be a push for some reforms in those positions, justifying that some of the lack of ability to push candidates through is restricting the success of the individual branches of the bureaucracy that we're speaking of. And so that might be utilized to put pressure on the Republicans to do something in the branch of Congress to actually get some work done.
Yeah, I think you really have something there. Again, we're waiting for some updates. Again, that photo that was being shared of the suspect, supposedly of a suspect. No, that was just an employee at the storage facility. There wasn't anything to that. Foreign accounts manipulating things in order to drive fear, like swatting, might have gotten someone killed. Two questions that I do want to touch. One is from Lucy Park, a channel member, $18.99. Do we need to bring bullets dipped in pork back? I have no legal comment whatsoever.
Let's not even discuss some of my more radical ideas.
No, we're not going to discuss that one thing. No, absolutely not. That might have to be for like a TKC After Dark situation at some point.
If we get enough interest to hear
I have no comment on that. Again, I think that I would hazard psychological warfare is a very important part of any declared war. I would hazard insurgent style tactics when not particularly necessary. So I'm going to say no comment on that one. It would probably depend on the case. This is from Deborah Friedman. She says, so Tony, should we use cranes like they do in Tehran? No, we shouldn't use cranes. Not the point. The point, again, let's say there is an individual, like for example, let's say there is a, from New Jersey, let's say there's an LGBTQ plus leader in New Jersey.
This sounds very specific.
Who had to resign from their super duper LGBTQ plus 2IA advocacy organization because it was found out they were diddling children. And we can confirm they have been convicted of diddling children. They have done some kind of confirmed, convicted sexual abuse against children. what should happen to that individual? The reason for the gallows and the public hanging is not spectacle. It's not. It's actually not for sport. The reason that in this case that is appropriate is it is humiliating. Number one, for those who do show up, it is humiliating. Number two, it is presented in front of the courthouse. The cranes are just to showcase the cruelty. No, they're also left up there like baking in the sun for the carrion birds to eat. No, that's barbaric. A gallows to hang, and then, by the way, to then let the body then be buried. Not in cruelty, but it is a humiliating form of death, and it is a public display in front of the local courthouse. This is the consequence for violating the most sacred of laws and the most innocent among us. And so that's kind of the argument behind the gallows, as opposed to just hanging people off of cranes until their bodies fall down. We're not Nineveh. Yeah.
There are two portions to the reasoning behind capital punishment. You are an autonomous human being who is responsible for your actions, but you are also a human being deserving of treatment as though a human being deserves. That is two principles that are born out of Judeo-Christian values that were what founded this country.
Well, yeah, I also believe that there is in fact a chance that you, indeed, again, in this particular instance, you can in fact give up your rights to certain kind of these human fundamental rights and dignities. There's a classic argument that no unusual punishment in the U.S. system, crazy, unjust, or cruel, no cruel or unusual punishment being the term there. A punishment must in and of itself have a natural nature of cruelty, though not unduly. And it must be unusual enough to cause an individual to avoid it. Again, one of the reasons that individuals do in fact have less qualms about committing crimes today is that one of the worst things that can happen to you is taxpayer-funded time out, where you eat and have socialized behavior and you get to work out and be warm and cool in the summer, that kind of stuff.
I'd argue that there's a second component to that, a failure of the state to properly wield power. That is also the fear of capital punishment, is the state has the power to, remove life from someone without consequences, such as going to jail for murder. Well, individual human beings do not. And so the failure of the government to properly utilize their power has the populace failed to respect the power of the government.
Oh, excellent question. Excellent question. Comes in from Ellie J. Ellie J asks, hey, Tony, love the show. Thank you very much. Does the United States have a right to seize Venezuelan oil tankers? Isn't that piracy and stealing? It is not piracy or stealing. Number two, I will ask you one question to answer. If the Venezuelan tanker makes the sale, they sell the oil, where does that money go? Well, you think there's a private company in Venezuela who then pays their employees with that? No, that is nationalized oil that then goes to Maduro's regime. What, you think he's like paying out rations with that money? No, he has no right to that particular export under nationalization. Those are our waters. The idea that in the Western Hemisphere, these are all international waters that we all have to respect with equal kindness and wonder. No, in the Western Hemisphere, there is only one kind of water, the United States water. Our Navy protects and rules those waves. That is the Monroe Doctrine. We are the guardians over Central and Southern America. And whatever the United States chooses to do in Central and South America is by our good graces. And in the case of this dictatorial government, the administration has decided, within every right that is granted to it constitutionally, Venezuela is to be totally blockaded, because they are using what little wealth that they have through things like selling oil to Iran and to Cuba and to Russia. Not even refined oil, just the crude, pumped out of the ground, thrown onto boats and sent out, is so that they can then fund their drug manufacturing and human trafficking operations, which is an act of war. Drug and human trafficking, that's an act of war. You are causing the harm to citizens of another country via economic and slavery means. So yeah, no, I don't think that's stealing at all. I don't care what they do with the oil. To be completely honest with you, I certainly wouldn't mind if they just then took it and sprayed it on certain parts. In fact, I think they should take the oil. I think they should fly it in planes, like the firefighting planes. They should then dump that crude on the narco farms and light it. That's what I think they should do with the captured Venezuelan oil. Every boat you send out, another narco farm burns. How about that? So, those particular questions aside, LOLEE, Lowly, 1234, a $10 super chat. Very, very kind of you. Really, really kind. Again, we don't ask you guys to tip us over here at the Tony Kinnett Cast, but we are very appreciative. Also, Todd Fulton has an excellent point. We did, in fact, the United States did build the oil infrastructure of Venezuela, and then they naturalized it. By the way, this is what the entire Suez crisis comes from. The Suez Canal, in which Egypt had its canal built by the United States by England and France. And then when Nasser came in and nationalized the canal, it cost England and France a ton of money and resources they had poured into that particular canal. And so the UK and France was like, hey, Israel, conquer the Sinai Peninsula. And then they goofed up the operation, and then Eisenhower and I think it was Khrushchev at that point got really, really upset, and they had to back away from it. But yes, the socialist nationalizing of international investment, sketchy stuff. Actions do, in fact, have consequences. All right, going to go ahead and do one final sweep here, kind of at the end of the bonus tonus section of the show, for anything else from some of our sources right now on the situation. Yes, regarding the situation in Salem, New Hampshire. Again, in Salem, New Hampshire, right now, we do have reports that federal agents have entered the storage facility. We do not have any information on, once those individuals are in the facility, if they have access to cameras throughout the building. The raid is still ongoing. Producer Nick is watching it now. Excellent stuff. Excellent stuff. And so with that then, again, I'm not just going to sit here and belabor it and say, well, maybe we'll hear about it now or later. So with that said, both of the, staging materials inside the storage facility, maybe for materials.
That was just a personal theory.
Oh, interesting stuff.
The Bondi bombers had bombs in their car. Earlier today, the individuals arrested supposedly had bomb materials in their car, as well as Turtle Island. Those terrorists had bomb-making materials. So I'm giving a guess, and that I am no professional in criminal investigations, but it would lead me to think of the possibility of the storage facility being used to store materials like that, and that's why the individual was there.
I think there's a pretty decent expectation of it. I just want to make sure that whatever it is that we find, that there is a full assessment on the design and the production of whatever it is that is in any kind of storage facility. Because if there's a stockpiling going on, we have a far more serious problem on our hands. And if, by the way, if we are finding stockpiles of terror weapons now, triple ICE, send them in right now and start mass deporting Eisenhower style. Because otherwise it is going to get horrifically violent very quickly. Not trying to fearmonger. When you see a stockpiling of weapons and munitions in an insurgency fashion, that's a red alarm kind of situation. I do want to point out two things before we hop off the air, though. I really should mention. First and foremost, a huge thank you to a couple of individuals. Dave Fallon gave $20 tonight in a super chat. I said, thank you, Daily Signal and Tony's team, for bringing us the truth. That's very, very kind of you. Happy holidays to all. A very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to you, my man. Joshua Reg gifting 5 memberships to individuals around the channel. It's very, very kind of you guys to be doing that. But also Diane Sherrill, who gave 50 memberships twice for 100 total memberships. Wow. 500 in total dollars of donation. Just again, for those who are recently with us, maybe you now have a channel membership to the Daily Signal. That does let you access some exclusive content. Not that we try to dangle that in front of you. You just get early access to some things. Again, we don't ask you guys to join that particular program, but we do want to be grateful for those who do so. So that aside, last little order of business here. In the description on the show, there's a Discord link. Which you can join us over on Discord. That's kind of where all of our producers and team are chatting away.
Yeah, especially if you received one of the gifted memberships, there will now be access to some exclusive videos for you.
That is true. We do host some
as well
stuff.
as TN10 early.
I would also
as soon
guess
as I finish
that
editing
we will
it.
be updating over in that particular group any additional information that we find once we're off the air. Because, of course, we're going to have to record the top news in 10, but we're going to wait a little bit this evening to make sure that we don't miss anything before we get that done. So those things aside, really appreciate you guys again. Sorry that things are a little discombobulated when you're covering a story that serious. One of those things. You just like slammed your hands down. Did they just get them? Nothing like that? Okay. Making sure. One of those days, ladies and gentlemen. So that aside, we are going to head out. This is the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Y'all, take care.